Sometimes I feel like I want to fly without no wings.
Hello, everybody. My name is Matt Barkoff. I am the Sober Cold Bear, and welcome to another episode of the Sober Cold Bear podcast. And I am so grateful and honored today to have Mr. Jake White join the podcast. Jake, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Happy to hang out with the Sober Cold Bear. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's got a nice ring to it. I'm very excited about it, but I'm more excited to hear your story. So just a real quick background on Jake. He's an incredible human being. I met him through John Hunter, who if you've listened to the previous episode, he was on the Sober Cold Bear, and we were just kind of talking, and he said, "Hey, I know this guy that you may want to meet. He's got some pretty cool things that he's up to." And that's how we got connected. So thanks for taking the time again, Jake. Jake has an organization called Vive18, which you can find at vive18.com, Vive18.com. His organization and he speaks all over the place. He has a prevention movement where he empowers youth to lead. He's spoken to over 100,000 students and educators, K through 12 college students across the U.S. He is, as I said, the founder and co-founder of Vive18, and he's been featured in news outlets including the USA Today and ABC News. As it's relevant, as y'all know, this podcast is about sobriety and recovery, and we cover a lot of different topics: mental health, entrepreneurship, business, things like that. Today's conversation is about his national movement that he's been building around drug-free events while still in college. And he's dedicated his life to engaging youth into health promotion and substance use prevention. We're going to have a nice conversation. There's a reason for this, especially around college students and drug use and, cocaine and fentanyl and just all the crazy shit that's out there, Jake. Just one other quick thing, Jake launched this when he was a student, and he's got this really cool toolkit called Beyond Drugs, Alcohol, and Vaping. Jake, why don't we kick off by you just telling me the story of how this amazing organization was born, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. Well, I saw addiction in my family since I was young, and when I went to college, I just decided that I was not going to drink or smoke or try any drugs, even if it seemed like that was the thing to do in college. And to be honest, it was the first time that I've ever felt like there was something wrong with me. Like growing up, I was confident. I did all these cool, fun things in school. I had great friends. The fact that I didn't drink, that I didn't smoke, and it seemed to matter to so many people. It was so odd. And instead of thinking, oh, there's something wrong with our culture, I thought, what if there's something wrong with me? Like, what should I be wanting to do this? But I watched one of my favorite family members, my uncle, just really struggle. And he was a kind, smart, generous guy, and his life was being ruined by addiction. And so it helped me stay true to what I wanted. And long story short, I actually went 2 years on campus, and I did not meet one person who said, "Jake, I'm sober. I'm like you." And I went to campus with 9,000 people. So this was really weird. And I'm very outgoing, so I was meeting everybody. But it was so strange to me. And then I read this statistic, and it said that 1 out of every 3 college students was actually just like me. They were sober, drug-free. They don't drink. They don't use. And I remember thinking, like, all right, if this is true, how is it that I haven't met anybody? Maybe they've learned to do what I have done. They became silent about their decision. They didn't want to tell people because you're not going to get invited to stuff, or people are going to call you boring or arrogant or over-religious or whatever labels they might have for that. And so I thought, all right, well, I bet you if that stat is true, people want a place to hang out and to have fun and feel good and make friends. So if I'm not willing to create something like that, I can't wait around for somebody else to do it. And Matt, this is where things get interesting. I had this idea. I was like, house parties are cheap. They're kind of grungy, like there's adventure to it. I'm just going to throw a house party and not serve any alcohol and just see who shows up. And Matt, I want you to guess. So I actually, with one of my buddies, his name is Steve, we went out on campus in a day and we met 129 people. And we invited them to a sober house party. Now, keep in mind, this is college and this is in Wisconsin.
Wow.
So out of 129 people, how many do you think wanted to come to our, our drug-free house party?
I mean, my hope is that they all said I would love to come. My assumption is that not many said I would come.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
So
it's really interesting.
nine people said no, and 120 people said yes.
Wow, that is crazy.
It was wild.
How did you promote it? Were you just walking around and just going up to people? Did you have flyers? Like, how did you promote it?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I teach now is the best promotion is not by advertising, but it's by inviting. And so we honestly just had a notebook and then a pen, and we'd walk up to strangers, introduce ourselves, ask their name, invite them to the event. And it's, if you think about it, like I didn't realize this at the time, but it makes sense now since we've built this movement is why we were successful.
Hmm.
Like no one wants to be sold to, right? They can walk past the flyer, the post, whatever it is, a bunch of times, not even think about you or your event. But when you stop someone and you show interest in them, they feel acceptance and belonging, and now they have a new friend. And then you get their contact information, so we can market all of our events for the
Sure.
rest of the year to them. So we build lists. That's what we do for our events, and that's how we started from the very beginning. And I will tell you, the first event was terrible. They called us the Kool-Aid Party because that was the only thing good about it. There was nothing to do. But by the end of a semester, we started getting pretty good, had things to do, had music, sponsors like Pizza Hut and Red Bull. And then students across the country were sending messages saying, hey, this is actually pretty amazing. Can we do this at my school?
So were you
And
promoting
Movement
it
was
through
born.
putting it through social media to kind of get the word out at that point, or had folks just heard about it and through email and snail mail and reached out to you?
Right. Dude, yeah, this is back in 2012.
Okay, so Facebook
So
was around.
yep, I had Facebook, and then I studied journalism in college, and one of our
Okay.
classes we had to create a blog.
Okay.
So I was just writing a blog about this, and that's when I started getting messages, which is crazy because you think people must have been Googling something around sober events or looking for things to find it or come across it because I wasn't promoting it. I was just literally just made a blog, started posting.
Amazing. It's funny. I have two kids. My older son is a freshman in college at U of O. He plays baseball at U of O, and
Cool.
he, along with a bunch of his friends, were actually just home. They're all getting out for the summer from all their different colleges, and they were here last weekend. And I asked them, like, how was your first year? How was this? How was that? A lot of them are rushing fraternities where there obviously is a lot of drugs and alcohol. We actually talked quite a lot about drugs and alcohol and and the dangers of drugs and alcohol. It's just it is absolutely fucking rampant, dude. Like
Mm-hmm.
crazy rampant. And I'm very direct with these boys where I'm just like, look, you know, you guys need to be really careful because it's like in the days when I used to be, addicted to all sorts of drugs and alcohol, man, cocaine and Vicodin and pills and not just alcohol. If I was still addicted today to those substances, I would probably be dead just because of just all of the risks out there. And what they told me was that, there's a lot of kids that are just ignoring those risks, and it's so scary. So it's like, how do we get the word out in a healthy way that, this is not something to fuck around with, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Well, I think everybody wants to. Here's the tough part. The reasons why people will start using is because they're looking to deal with something in their life, right? And so
Absolutely.
the answer to that question is to help young people realize that there are healthy ways where you can invest in solutions that make you better instead of ones that risk all the things that you want. And that's a large part of the message when I bring to schools is people will ask like, Jake, how can you speak about drugs? You don't have a story around that, or like you don't have a recovery story. You've never done them. How can you talk about them? And what young people desperately need is they need to know that they can get what they want now without sacrificing what they want in their future. Because if it feels like, oh no, the only way to relieve stress, the only way to have fun, the only way to fit in is to use this substance, and I might die one day because of it.
Yeah.
Well, the front part of the brain's not done developing until your mid 20s. So you're going to grasp onto what you want now, and you're going to think less about what you want in the future. And so we really have to build a lot of systems, a lot of coaching, a lot of resources around helping students develop this long-term mindset, and then also giving them the skills. And that's an important word, the skills to take care of what they need right now.
The
Yep,
toolkit,
absolutely.
yes. You know, I think there's this peer pressure and, you know, this kind of hidden like desire to fit in. And I think a lot of kids, you know, whether they want to do drugs and alcohol, whether they want to take or drink or take drugs or take alcohol, a lot of them may not want to use it, but because they're in a situation where they feel like the only way that they can be accepted is is through, you know, succumbing to others that are doing that. That's a real problem. I'm guessing that's something that you talk about with these kids in terms of like, it's okay if you're not, you know, if you choose to abstain from taking drugs or alcohol, no one's going to hold that against you. And if they do, like, they're not worth your time. You know, it's, you know, there's other ways to do it. Now, of course, folks like myself who, you know, admittingly, I am an alcoholic, I am an addict. I do have a lot of trauma from the past, and I did use drugs and alcohol to mask all those, you know, those traumatic issues and pain. But for some of these kids, they just get into it because they want to be a part of the group.
Yeah. One of the biggest reasons for today's generation, right? The ones that are growing up here in like the, you know, 2020s and stuff, they are trying to deal with their feelings. We talk about a lot of feelings. We talk a lot about feelings today, right? Like mental health is a big thing. We're open about our feelings of anxiousness or things like that. It's in everyday vocabulary.
Yeah.
There was a study done that was showing the students that use, is actually a 2-part study. So they asked parents, how many of you believe your students would use a drug to deal with stress? 7% of these parents said, oh, my kids might use, you know, to deal with stress. Then they asked the students that were actually using substances, why is it that you're using? And the top thing that they said was stress. Yeah. 70% of those students said stress is the reason. And so when I think about it, it's like when we are building resilient students, because you can't take away drugs, you can't take away peer pressure, you can't take away our culture as quick as we want to, right? Like we want to change things. What's easier and more effective to change is one student's life. So if you're listening and you're saying, how do I build a student that's resilient to all this pressure and culture and things like that? Well, it's 3 things, the 3 C's that I use. It's confidence, community, and coping skills. Confidence, community, and coping skills. Because if they're confident enough, they don't need your approval. What do you need me to do to fit in? Who cares? I don't need it. If they have community, they have other people to be involved in and be around with and to know that they belong and that they're of value. And then coping skills, because yes, we're going to face life's challenges. If I have those skills.
Do you feel like parents, and again, I'm a parent, so I can certainly tell you what I do. I'm very transparent with my daughter. She's obviously, you know, in the loop on my addiction and my alcohol history. I tell her what addiction can do and that it is hereditary and it's a disease of the brain. And I do tell her there's other ways to cope with things. So I think to your point, to those 3 C's, like that's just spot on. I'm also, and my wife and I, you know, we're very transparent with our kids about drugs and alcohol. I don't feel like, and again, this might be just my own experience. I think parents assume that their kids know, but I don't feel like it needs to become more of a conversation, in my opinion. I think the more that parents can be comfortable talking to their children about what's out there and the risks and the dangers of things are out there, maybe they wouldn't, you know, next time they get into a situation, there's some white powder sitting there. Maybe they'll think, maybe there's some fentanyl in here. Maybe I shouldn't do this. Right.
Well, I want to say good job, because number one, right, having the conversation, we have to. If we don't, they're learning about it from someone else, right? And we don't know if we can trust that. And 2, knowing of people who have had a negative experience, like that's not always the catalyst for change, but we all know like life's not just one big decision. It's the sum of all these decisions over time.
Yeah.
So this helps. I also love, because you dude, you're the sober cold bear. Like, you're cold plunging and things like that. That is a healthy coping skill. You're not only using as one of something that you provide for your family with, but that's a positive coping skill. You're like teaching them how the brain works, how the body works, and they're learning these tools. So, dude, I think all of that stuff, like, keep it up. If you're listening to this podcast and you're a parent, the best thing you can do is be open about the reality of substances,
Yeah.
giving them real tools, and honestly believing in the things that they want to do. Because whenever I speak to parents, one of the things that I make sure to tell them is that drug prevention looks like a lot of things. It might be joining a local theater troupe. It could be sports. It could be their grades and ambitions. For some of these kids that want to be famous YouTubers or athletes, that is their prevention strategy. And I know growing up, like, the adults in our life, they love us and they try to shield us from getting hurt, right? So, like, Matt, when I was young, I wanted to be a professional football player, and I am scrawny. I am so skinny. I have been, since I was a kid. And so I'm sure my dad was like thinking to himself, like, dude, you should not be a football player. He encouraged me. And what I realize now is that was my excuse to make good decisions and stay healthy and pay attention in school, is because if my dream is to do this, instead of trying to change me into maybe doing something more, quote, realistic, just by being my cheerleader and champion, like that, those are the reasons why I'm going to stay healthy. And so as a parent, that's a big thing, is be a champion and a cheerleader. Don't choose something new, because that's prevention too.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, your kids aren't going to be with you forever. They're going to go off and they're going to be with their friends and they're going to start driving and they're going to go to college. You can't, as a parent, you can't control what your kids do outside of the bubble of your home. And you can only give them the proper tools and the proper resources and the proper coaching on how to be preventative and how to like play the tape forward. Say, like, if you're in this situation, this is what happens. I've heard way too many a story where, kids grow up, they don't necessarily, they've got a loving family, don't get me wrong, or maybe, they're in a shitty family situation or whatever, but they don't necessarily receive a lot of this guidance, right? And what can happen out of this is when they finally get into these situations, they didn't necessarily receive the training or the foresight or the guidance to be able to say, when you encounter this situation, I want you to think twice before you do anything and think of what the possible circumstances and possibly a permanent circumstances could be as a result of taking that drug or that or drinking. And it's a powerful thing that we're talking about here. I mean, we could talk. I really want to let's dive into your organization, Vive18, because obviously what you're doing is game changing. You speak. Tell me when you started to kind of go out and starting to do these speaking engagements. Tell me a little bit about like the evolution of how you got to today, and then I'm sure I'll ask a lot more questions. But let's start there.
Yeah. Well, since we left off in college doing the sober parties, right? What's funny is one of my first speaking engagements, I was hired by my university to speak to all the incoming freshmen to get them involved in campus. So that's when I got a taste and was like, dang, all right, if I could speak for a living, that would be really cool. And then when I started throwing these sober parties, I had the same thought. If I could help people throw these safe parties, that would be really cool. Somehow make a living out of this. Then another class I'm in, right? So I was blogging in one of my classes. Then I had a class to make a website. And so I made a website saying, I'm Jake White, a speaker, like, what would my speaking website look like? And I got a call when I was on campus. I get a call from a strange number and I answered it. And it was my first booking. It was a school. It said, I found you online, saying like, you're a speaker and you're here in Wisconsin, because that's where I grew up. So I was like, how much do you charge to come speak to my students? And I threw out the biggest number I could think of. I was like, $200, and then she was like, oh, that's great. And I was like, shoot, I should have picked a different number. But
I have a feeling you're a little bit more than $200 now, but
oh, a
yeah,
little
yeah,
bit.
a little bit more. Yeah, but you know
Yeah.
what? Look, I think the fact that you were able to come up with a concept that, and that's the great thing about being an entrepreneur, is that coming up with a concept that, and of course you worked really hard to build your business, right? You worked super hard to build this, and you didn't know how it was going to turn. I mean, shit, dude, I started this podcast. I don't know where this thing's going to go. And I'm not doing it for any other reason. I'm not doing this to get Instagram followers. I'm not doing this to get YouTube subscribers. I'm doing this because it's something that I feel good about doing. And I know the things that I'm talking about and the issues that I'm covering and the people that I have on, like you, they're of utter importance, and that out there, somebody's going to listen to this down the road, whether it's tomorrow or whether it's 10 years from now, hopefully. And they'll be like, wow, I really got a lot of, downstream value. And so you're basically providing a pay it forward service. And that's the beauty of this.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. And I love that I get to meet you because of this. Like, we wouldn't have gotten connected probably if you didn't start this and meet John and all that good stuff. So
Exactly.
yeah, we get to learn too, which is a benefit from that. Like, Matt, from that point, like, I like what you said though, is we don't know where it's going to go. Is my story has all these twists and turns, of course, but from that moment, I wish I could tell you, like, yeah, things took off and it was so great. The thing is, the parties were the only thing that have ever been easy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it is, we had the formula right away, and I feel like it is a gift, it is a blessing that we had an easy time doing that, because we can get hundreds of college students to attend a drug-free party anywhere in the country. The formula
Sure.
works. The thing that was tough is, how do you actually build a sustainable business that can last with or without you, and how do you make a living doing it? So I spent a decade figuring that out, like working other part-time jobs, hustling. If I broke down my hourly wage, it'd probably be embarrassing to like even know what that is over the last 10 years. But now you just see the compounding effect of that work, and now things are moving. And yeah, just last year, right, we spoke at over 100 schools, and we're
100 schools. Wow.
yeah, in 1 year. We have 5 speakers on our lineup. I'm just one of them.
Oh,
I'm
you
not even
have
the best one.
so you
Yeah.
have an entire like staff of folks that talk about this very thing.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool because
Where do I
the
sign
when
up?
you right? Yeah.
Yeah, where do I
The
sign up?
the thing that's cool though is that when someone books Vive18, they're getting a message that is positive and it's actionable, right? Like, the students could start throwing drug-free events afterwards if they want.
Oh, that's
They
so
can
great.
start, right? So it lasts
Yeah.
longer than any other presentation. And then we have opportunities to develop their leadership skills. We have a nationwide conference where people actually fly to us and learn leadership skills around mental health and prevention. We have a prevention cruise coming up in April
I know
where
I got the you mean not April, August, right?
no, it's April 2026 is the cruise.
Next year.
Yep.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when is your next event? Like, besides this cruise, when is your next kind of like where everybody gets together and talks about stuff? What's that called?
So like a conference
Yeah.
or where we go out and speak.
Yeah, the conference.
Yeah, the conference is in December, and it's slated for Orlando, and we're dialing things in with our resort sponsor right now to make sure where it's exactly going to be. But yeah, that's one where teenagers from across the nation will fly in with their organizations and come learn.
That's unbelievable, man. I want to make sure that I'm able to get information on that to promote it and talk about when I launch this thing. Let's talk a little bit about the content that you guys cover. Do you have kind of a playbook of things that you discuss around this topic? Is it more of like just like a general talk about this? Like, what's the approach to when you go in front of a student audience?
Yeah. So the first thing to understand about speaking to students is this is a spark. It's not the life-changing fire. So a
Right.
speech could change a couple people's lives, and that's great. But if you want to change a culture, it takes a little more work. So the hour-long keynote or our presentation for schools is super dynamic. It's really fun. It's high energy. We are talking with the audience. There's a game show. We play the drums. We teach them like things so they're active in the audience. But the main message is this: life is not made by chance, it's made by choice. And the choices you take are going to lead you where you want to go, or they're going to lead you somewhere else. And the way that we make decisions is we decide if something is a shortcut or a skill set. Now, a shortcut is the quick, easy way out, right? Oh, I don't want to do the work to like learn my feelings or how to cope with stress or to have fun or to fit in. I just want to do the easy way. I'm going to try this pill. I'm going to smoke. I'm going to drink. That's the quick example. This skill set would be, well, I want to actually develop a skill of making friends, having fun, and feeling good. So I'm going to lean into something that I love. And so we do teach them about dopamine and serotonin and refusal skills and all these good life-changing things to understand about themselves and the human brain. But at the same time, we're embedding this theme of choosing skill sets instead of shortcuts, because then you can get everything you want now while protecting what you want for your future, and honestly building up your future. Because like my big thing is drumming. And so that's why I integrated it into my presentation. So if I'm stressed, I'll get behind the drum kit. It's also a way to make new friends because I'm meeting musicians and stuff like that. And then it's a great trigger to make me feel good.
Yeah, when I'm stressed now, I go to the gym, or I go into my sauna, or I take a cold plunge, or I meditate, or I have a toolkit now, because the sobriety program is all about, using the tools in the 12 steps, right? And that is, if I'm feeling a certain way, there's usually a character defect behind why I'm feeling that way. And what is the opposite of that character defect? And it's shedding the layers of your ego and just kind of wearing that loose garment and just kind of showing up as the best version of yourself, which I talk about quite often. I was going to ask you a question just, regarding, I know what I was going to talk about. Studies are really starting just to come out around social media and devices and dopamine and drugs and just the deep connection. I mean, we all have phones, and we all have these, I'm certainly guilty as charged for phone issues myself. My kids are, things like that. How do you incorporate that similar message into your talk track? Do you do that at all? Do parents come up to you after and say like, God, like device is a massive problem in my house. How do I deal with it? Like, I assume people come up to you all the time and ask those questions.
Yeah, there's, whenever you run a business or organization, people want to offer advice a lot, or they want something else. They're like, hey, this was great. What else do you have? And so people will say, Jake, what do you have on gambling? What do you have on social media? And I will always refer them to someone else who does it better, because we have limited time and resources. We're a small team. So like, this is our lane. We do substance use prevention for youth. And if there's a time in the future, we build something on social media, but I'd rather just, there's actually one called My Life Online that teaches, like, I don't know what it's called, social literacy or social competence for young people and how to use things online well and not get sucked into some of the negative. But the reality is, social media to our brain, it's just a drug that goes through our eyes instead of, our mouth or something. But yeah, very similar.
So, okay, so Vive18 is now starting to, take off. I would say that's it's beyond that point now. You've got, 5 folks on your staff. You're doing, you did 100 events last year where you spoke. Where do you see things going in the next couple of years? Are you going to write more books? Are you going to continue to just do more I assume you're going to do more speaking engagements. Are you going to go on? Are you going to, expand out? Are you going to get more folks? Like, what's kind of your operations? What's your plan?
Yeah. I mean, personally, I'm working on a book right now, and it's still in the beginning phases. So I can't tell you much about it, except for it's my story and our keynote are wrapped up in a way so that if a student wasn't there or they want to learn more about the presentation afterwards, they can read this book, and it could be life-changing. Our toolkit that you mentioned, the Beyond Vaping, Drugs, and Alcohol toolkit, is something that schools are starting to use. So that's going to grow and is going to be used at more schools across the country. So imagine your kids, going to school and their health teacher is running our curriculum in class, and these students are becoming more resilient and less likely to use substances.
Yeah.
The conference is a big one where I see us as a movement is really bolstering this conference piece where, you know, young people around the country are maybe starting chapters of
Yeah,
these
I was going to ask you
prevention
about that.
clubs. Yeah, and they don't even have to call it Vive18. We have partners all over the country that have different ones. Like, we'll help them start it, but the fun for them, the students, is like branding it themselves and creating their own entity and coming
Yeah.
up with projects and ideas. So we're just building an ecosystem of support right now to say, we're going to get together once or twice a year. You'll have opportunities for that. We have leadership content and courses so that as students graduate and new students come in, we've got new training materials and inspiration to keep them motivated to make good choices. And um, I, I basically see Vive18 as, like, everyone used to know DARE. When you say drug prevention, people think
Yeah.
DARE, and bummer that it just wasn't that effective. But I would love for people to think Vive18 when they think drug prevention, and instead of thinking scary or something like that, it's like, no, Vive18, the place where you make a ton of friends, you have fun, you build your future. It's a resume booster. You know, you get these awesome trips. I see that happening, you know, in the next decade or so, or however long it takes. I think I'm a lifer in this.
No, it sounds like it. Has anybody that saw you speak in the past, have they ever reached back out to you and said, "Hey Jake, I saw you when I was, you know, a junior in high school, and you know, 3 years later I was in college and I faced a situation, but I remembered like what you told, you know, in my school, and I was there, and I just, you know, I want to thank you for what you did." Have you received any of those notes?
I have quite a few that have been like, hey, you came to my school. I was using marijuana and I thought I had a good reason for it. But I took a look at my life after, you know, you were here, and I'm done. Like, I'm quitting. That's honestly, that's so amazing. I wouldn't think that my talk would do that. Again, that's 45 minutes or an hour. Praise God that they had that impact.
Yeah.
I can't take credit. There have been a lot of students that also say, like, hey, you gave me something positive, because like I was going to drop out of school. I was getting into the party scene, but I started going to your events and doing this, and I'm back in it. Like, I'm going to graduate. And then people wanting to be a part of what we're doing, right? Like, this was
Yeah.
so fun. How can I help? Or I want to be a leader, or things like that. Those are also great moments. And I know there's only a few that we get to hear. A lot of them we don't get to hear.
That's unbelievable. That's amazing. So, right now, are you pretty much like booked out over, you know, for quite some time at this point? I mean, I would assume like the word's out there now, and you've got your podcast and you've got your site and things like that. Like, is it getting pretty busy for you? And I would assume it's only, you know, it's only going to get, you know, more so.
Yeah, so we are busy, but like I said, there's five of us for a reason. So if anybody is interested, if you know someone at a school district or a middle school, high school, college, who could use a positive, actionable message around this that is not judgmental, and really fun, then I mean, definitely contact us, because we can make room. And what I realize that we're doing, and you'll appreciate this as a business owner,
Yeah.
this is less about me and my story, and it's more about the process and the platform that we've built. So
Yeah.
I've trained recent college graduates within 2 weeks, had them up and going to do these presentations and rocking it in new schools across the country.
That's
It's the
incredible.
platform that has the power. It's not me.
So
So
you're taking your resources and you're putting them online and making them available to folks as well, correct?
we have to vet the people that we train really well,
Of
because
course.
again, you're going and you're working with youth. So I'm not like putting the parties and stuff, like the college sober parties.
Yeah.
We have a free course that people can use. Like, if a student ever reaches out to me, I don't charge them anything. I'm like, no, dude, run with this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
great, go make an impact. But if it's the speaking and the influence that we're having on a large audience, that's where I have to be very careful of who gets our information, how do they use it. Also, they're representing us well and they're being good stewards of it, because there are ways to do prevention badly as well. Like, I would say most of the country's not doing it
Well,
very well.
there's a lot of bad actors out there, Jake, that, you know, claim that, you know, that they can be hired for sobriety coaching and addiction coaching. And I mean, I sat on, I'm not going to name the individual or the organization, but I sat on one just to listen in, and I heard this individual basically say, yeah, AA, it's all bullshit, and it's not going to get you sober, and it's not about, meanwhile it's like I'm literally like, I so wanted to just like speak up and be like, actually, I go to AA and it works really, really well. And there's a reason why the program works for everyone. So like, if you want to profit from it, that's your call.
Yeah.
People want to pay you. But I feel like, there's such, there are some folks out there that are trying to take advantage of it in the ways that you and I are doing it, is my point.
Yeah. I think you have to have a sort of reverence for what you're doing and respect for your field. Because I'll tell you too, when I started this, I was really bad and it took a while to get good. And I had to invest thousands of dollars and years of my life to get good at this. And yeah, for anybody thinks who they can just fast track it and like, just honestly, like how I just put up a website saying I was a speaker, like I wouldn't recommend that, right? Like that might get you in the door, but you got to invest in your craft. And that's just how success works, right? That's a real principle of life. It
really
takes work to get good at what you do.
Yeah, well, it takes time. I mean, like with anything, it is a practice, it is a craft, and it's not something that you can just, say, I'm just going to start a podcast or I'm going to start a speaking company and we're just going to go talk about addiction and sobriety and mental health and business. And like, it's, I think it's equally important that sometimes you don't have to launch everything with every single answer, because you're going to learn things along the way. So it's okay to take risks, right? It's okay to take chances and know that you're going to make mistakes, and know that, maybe, one podcast isn't going to go well, or one speaking engagement isn't going to go well for you, but certainly you get better as time goes on. And
Right.
and again, now look at you, and you're doing so great. Jake, we're going to go ahead and kind of wrap up here. I really appreciate you coming on and telling us all about your organization, Vive18. How can they reach you? Give us your information in closing.
That sounds great. Thank you, Matt. If you like this kind of conversation, check out the Drug Prevention Power Hour. It's a podcast that I run every week on Mondays. So if this stuff you're like, oh, that's actually something I'm interested in, I interview a lot of people that are way smarter than me. And a lot of things I'm saying, I'm just taking from the people that I've had on my podcast and learning from. So that's one way, is to check out that podcast. The other one is, go to vive18.com, vive18.com, or find us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, wherever that is. You'll see all these fun videos of us, working with young people, training. You also see podcast snippets and all that good stuff and behind the scenes content. But basically, I just want to say, for somebody who's listening to this, keep up the good work. Sobriety, like your sobriety, is number one, and you can influence not only your next generation, right? Of you have kids, or if you have people around you, but you're going to influence the world, because I've seen the world change from the time I was born until now. Is there was a big stigma around not using. I felt super alone. And today we live in a world where I don't know about you, but I don't feel alone. There's this big community around sobriety and recovery.
Yes.
And we're so supportive of each other. There's so much to learn and excitement around it. And I just want to tell everyone to keep up the good work, because you're worth it.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I agree with you. Like, this is a generational change type of thing. It's not just me that I'm obviously, you have to get sober if you need to get sober, and that's something you need to do. Like for me, it was, but you have to first do it for yourself. You can't do it for anybody else. You have to start with yourself, admitting the problem and surrendering to the problem and moving forward. But the downstream byproduct, the downstream impacts of what I'm doing, I know is going to affect my marriage, my kids, my children's children that aren't here yet, their friends, others that I come in contact with, who knows who's going to see the podcast and things like that. So you're absolutely right. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap. Thank you everybody for being here. Jake, you're an awesome dude. And I'm so excited that we know each other and are friends now. Just to kind of close up, the Sober Cold Bear podcast I created this as a resource. I created this as a place where you can come and listen to all sorts of cool topics, including obviously obviously sobriety and addiction, but I cover mental health. I cover, great things that Jake is doing with Vive18. But if you think that you have a problem, the likelihood of you having a problem, it probably means that you have a problem. So it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to ask for help. And when you ask for help, ask somebody that you love. Ask your spouse, your wife, your husband, ask your best friend. Reach out to me. I love you. Reach out to Jake. People are here to help you. People understand, what you're going through, and you're not alone in this. That's the key. You're not alone. So Jake, I appreciate you, man. We're going to go ahead and sign off, and thank you everybody for stopping by, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, Jake.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Sometimes I feel like I want to fly without no wings. I elevate inside my mind, and sometimes I look